So we are now talking about the the real estate market in Leipzig. We are based in Berlin, but we have an office in Leipzig. And Julien, he is a partner of Leipzig, and he is brokering all the deals in Leipzig for us with his Leipzig team. So we have quite a lot of questions from you guys. You send us a lot of questions in there, and we just have a few minutes today to respond to this question because we are running now out of time. We had so many German listeners today and spectators watching the show and asking us questions for the Leipzig property market. I will give you a quick summary what we've discussed so far. If you do have questions in the chat, please don't hesitate to put them now live, and we of course going to respond to you. So you have sent us a couple of questions in, and I'm going to go through that quickly. So we have a purchase price development in Leipzig, which is Mr. Palatini or Julien, he already explained that to us, is quite significant in the last 5 to 10 years. Everyone is talking about Berlin, but Leipzig also had a big jump in prices, mainly based on the huge population growth. Julien, you are now at nearly 27 years old, and you are now buying, selling, brokering deals in Leipzig since you are 19. Is this correct?
Everything about real estate.
Yes, yes. How did you decide to go to Leipzig? What was your decision to go there?
Because Berlin was too expensive at the beginning. In the age of 17, 18, I was beginning to invest in real estate. So, and I live next to Berlin, and it was quite expensive.
Yeah. From today's perspective, it was very cheap.
Yeah, that was cheap. Yeah. Yes, it was very expensive, and Leipzig was in this time cheap enough to I can handle it.
Yes, as a student, yes. You know, as a young grown up. Okay. And what made you so successful in basically buying and selling in Leipzig? What is the secret of your success?
The strategy. I have a lot of strategy to sell a real estate, maybe for owners, for the new owners, or for investors to rent in or find a tenant. Yeah. They pay a lot of money per month, so yeah, it's about the strategy. Yeah.
Okay.
Difficult to explain.
Yes. Okay. So quickly to explain a few questions you send us in. So first of all, Julien, he's very young but very experienced. He has no more than 8 years experience in the Leipzig property market. He is advising you as an international investor or seller or buyer or tenant or potential new landlord what realistic rents you could get. Mm-hmm. So we have our own letting and management department in Leipzig, and Julien is renting also the apartments for you as an investor. And what's the sort of figure you achieve in average for rent in Leipzig? Cold rent?
I think from 8 to 10 euros per square meter for all buildings. Yeah. And 12 to 15 euro for new building. Yeah.
Okay. So this is quite interesting for you as an investor. I mean, especially compared to the purchase price. The average purchase price in Leipzig is around 2,500.
2 to 2,500.
Yes, per square meter for a used second-hand apartment, which is not being renovated. If it's renovated and if it's in a good area, what sort of price you would look at?
Renovate good area up to 3,000.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. And the new build prices, we also had that question today. They are quite significant higher. Huh? Is this correct?
It begins 4,000 per square meter.
Yes.
Up to 8.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's quite a lot.
Next to real in the center, city center.
Yes. So the prime location area, it's
of course prime location, main station, 8.5. Penthouse. Okay. Like a penthouse, 8.5.
So for instance, the penthouse here in Berlin would cost you anything between 12 to 15,000 euros. In Leipzig, you're looking at around 8,000, which is of course very expensive for Leipzig.
Yes.
And but the average property in Berlin is, if you buy now a new build in Berlin, you would find nothing below 5,000. You have to go on the outskirts, more likely 6,000, somewhere in an okay area. And in prime location in Berlin, you would look around 8,000 euros a square meter for a new build, because the price of land is so expensive these days. And in Leipzig, the new build area in a similar location, you would look anything between 4,000 to 6,000 euros as an average price in a good area
for new building.
For the new building,
city center.
City center. So there's a huge gap. And the rents, which is very important, that's why so many investors are now looking into Leipzig, are not that much less than in Berlin, because the average household income in Leipzig is not that much less than in Berlin. So you already confirmed that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think the average household in Leipzig is around 2,000 euros.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And I think in Berlin is a bit 2,500, 2,400. So the big difference is not there in the salary. And Leipzig, of course, has a lot of positive things. I mean, we discussed this today. We have Porsche, we have BMW, we have an airport that's working. We have the new airport in Berlin.
University.
Yeah, which is not too far away from Leipzig. We have several universities in Leipzig.
Yes.
We have a huge train station. We have a very healthy student and research and university scene. That's very positive.
Parks.
Yeah, parks, greenery, a famous sports university, a leading football club in Germany is called Red Bull Leipzig. So a lot of positive things. So it's definitely worthwhile for you guys to look into that city. So we discussed also a few tricks we can do to help you to find the right property. I think the big problem we're challenging here is for international investors to understand the local market. So please feel free to contact us at the international team, and of course contact Julien if you have further questions for particular properties. It's very important for you to understand that there's a big difference between a tenanted apartment and a vacant apartment. So similar to Berlin or other cities here in Germany, the tenants are very protected, also in Leipzig, but we do not have a rent ceiling in Leipzig, and so far we don't have a so-called Mietpreisbremse, which is a limited rent increase, which is an exception, because Leipzig is not being seen as a city that, or the government in the city doesn't think it's necessary to do so at the moment. It might come in the future, we don't know yet, but that's something you should be prepared for. However, the tenants in Leipzig, it's much easier for them to find another property, just especially comparing it to Berlin, because in Berlin the vacancy rate is below 1%, and I think in Leipzig it's around 2–2.5% vacancy rate, which is double the vacancy rate of Berlin, but again it's very, very low. Comparing to what Julien today said already in German to our listeners, there are very small districts in Leipzig. Leipzig is around 600,000 people at the moment, is this correct? And I think when I studied in Leipzig a few days ago, it was only 450,000. So within the last 10–15 years, the city has increased massively in the population and also in the income, which is very important. We discussed today the purchase prices. You of course have the rental map and the purchase map of Leipzig on our website, which you can download. It's free. You just go to the website and you can check online. You can see a little bit the average prices per public transport station. So we did the tram, the overground, the bus station, and there are various connections within Leipzig. Please also, this is one of the extracts of the today webinar or show, is that you should also not only look into the city center of Leipzig. So the city center of Leipzig, people are buying there more or less for capital growth, because I think within the next 10 years or after 10 years, the capital growth in the city center will be significant, which is something we think, yes, it will be significant, but the question is, do the people actually have the rent to cover the mortgages for you? And that's a big question. So we have, especially Julien, advised also to look in the average areas. I think our office is in Kleinschachau.
Like suburbia.
Yes, yes. So not only, so it's all within the city premises of Leipzig, but it's not necessary in the city center similar to Berlin. You have the so-called S-Bahn ring in Berlin, and in Leipzig you don't have an S-Bahn ring, but you have a tram, which is a bit different to the S-Bahn ring, but it's a very good connected city with a lot of parks, recreation area, so there's no problem. You commute for 15–20 minutes to the city center of Leipzig, and the purchase price are 30–40% cheaper for your property. However, the rents in Leipzig are not so much cheaper, because the tenants in Leipzig tend not to live in the city center of Leipzig, because there are a lot of tourists, it's a lot of hectic, and the quality of life isn't necessarily there, because the typical residential area in Leipzig, similar to other cities, is, I would say, the best areas in Leipzig. If you look on the map, are southwest Leipzig,
city center, southeast.
Yes. So these are the typical residential areas, and of course there are typical industrial areas, which is a bit further north.
Yes.
Where you also have the airport and
next to BMW.
BMW, DHL, Amazon, all there. They're a bit further north, which is more the the industrial area. So there are different districts of Leipzig, which are also on the website, which you can check. They are both in German and English, but of course you can contact us directly, and which you can get a few things. We had a couple of questions. The typical apartment in Leipzig, the typical price is, what do you think? We sell 150,000, 200,000?
100 to 170,000.
Yeah,
it's a typical price.
Yeah,
range.
Price range. Oh. And if you compare that to Berlin, I mean, you won't find anything in that price range in a decent area in Berlin anymore. So I would say half price to Berlin, realistically. Yeah, likely. In terms of time to buy is quite similar to Berlin. I think we have the Corona pandemic. We discussed this today as well. So yes, we did have a hit in Leipzig, but not on the purchase price, just on the time, because it was March, April. It was very, very slow, the market, but prices haven't dropped. I think they even have increased.
Yes.
Yeah, significantly they have increased. Of course, from a lower level, of course. However, what we have seen is in Leipzig, what we have also seen in the other German cities, is that the time for you as an investor to get a mortgage has increased. So we had 2 weeks before Corona pandemic, maybe 4 weeks maximum to get a mortgage, to get your finance.
Yes.
And now we're looking at 6 or 8 weeks to get a finance. Yeah, so that's a problem. Problem if for you if you can't secure the property in the meantime, but that's something we can fix. Also the LTV ratio is in Leipzig much less for international investors. Berlin is much easier to finance for you as an international investor. You get a much better LTV. In Berlin, you typically get 65-70% LTV. In Leipzig, it's a bit harder, especially if you do a non-recourse finance. So that's something you can contact us. We have our own mortgage department, which helps you as an international investor. There is a question for Leipzig. How do you see the potential of Gohlis Süd? Julie, maybe you can respond to this a little bit.
I already answered it in German.
Yeah.
Gohlis Süd is a very good area to invest, but I think it's not like a typical scene. It's more than it's kindly increased last 10 years. I think it's difficult to say if it's a good area or a bad area. It's a lot of parks in Gohlis Süd. It's a good connection to the city center. There are a lot of soccer areas like this.
Yeah.
So the living area is very attractive for tenants or for owners, for everything. So the price is very stabil.
Yeah, stable. It's a stable property market. It's not the hottest area in the city, I would say.
No.
It's a very stable residential area. If you have a particular property you wish to buy, or maybe you wish to sell, please contact us. We'll give you a precise valuation. Maybe for you as a listener, you can use our free online tool on our website, where you can get yourself a free appraisal of your website. Of course, it's just an estimate, but it's pretty good with a certain price range. Maybe the next question, Julien, we have discussed today a little bit on the hotspots in Leipzig. What do you think on which areas you would advise to look into as maybe the hotspots in the future?
The hotspots now are City Center South, City Center East, Stötteritz, Reutnitz-Tonberg. These are now the hotspots. In the future, I cannot say what's the hotspot. I think Konnewitz is very comfortable, but City Center and Center South is the most common place.
Okay. Well, we have also discussed the future of Leipzig, of the city of Leipzig. Is there an oversupply, which is always a typical question, especially for our international investors when they come the first time to the city of Leipzig. They see a lot of project developments. I always advise for people to look at the Deutsche Bank report on the city of Leipzig. There's also a lot of research in Germany which is giving us a supply-demand situation. So Leipzig is not building enough properties for the citizen. We have a lot of people moving to the city of Leipzig, especially before Corona pandemic hit the market. We still have a lot of people living or trying to go to Leipzig, especially from Berlin. We have people from Berlin who actually decide to go to Leipzig rather to stay in Berlin, because the quality of life in Leipzig is fantastic. The rents are comparatively cheap, 30-40% less less rents in similar areas, and which is more important, even if the rents are equal to Berlin or close to Berlin, you do get free apartments to rent. And in Berlin, you simply don't get free apartments to rent because you have the rent ceiling. So no tenant or no landlord is willing to rent his apartment on the classical way because it doesn't make any money for him. So he rather decides to sell it to someone who wants to live there, or but he's not really renting it out at the moment. So that's a big profit for Leipzig. Many people are now moving to Leipzig. Yeah, I think, Julien, thank you for tonight. I gave you, because we're running out of time now, we just overstretched your time tonight, Julien. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. Thank you, Lucy, for organizing this tonight. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.